You've worked quite a bit with a software program called Birds. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
That's Bruce has developed this over many years. It is basically an algorithm for comparing the stylometric similarity between two texts, and with a view to look at, say, rhetorical progression. Is it rhetorically similar, or possibly authorial identification? Is it a sense of plagiarism, or was it borrowed from another author, or was it by a different author? So those sorts of things. Bird uses, regardless of which language it's implemented in, and he's implemented in Chinese, and I've helped him implement it in Homeric, Greek, and New Testament Greek, and the Hebrew Bible. It basically uses the half dozen or 14 of the most common particles as the basis for analysis. And those particles in Homer, they comprise about 21% of the entire corpus. Bird uses particles, prepositions, conjunctions, that sort of thing, because those are the frequency would not vary that much depending on genre.
Right.
One genre to the next. Of course, there are going to be differences, especially in poetry, but basically, if you look at content words, they're going to vary widely from one subject to the next.
Sure.
You look at the content, you look at the connector words, the particles, they don't vary that much. So it's a more useful tool, I think. The data set, the Homer data set for Iliad and Odyssey that I used was from Northwestern University. It's online on a website called the Chicago Homer, and you can download the complete data set from their website. But that database tags every word, whether it's speech or narrative. And conveniently, it falls out by lines. There's no line every line is either all speech or all narrative. So that's not an issue. But interestingly, the Iliad, 111,700 and some words, is about 45% speech. The Odyssey, a smaller book, 87,000 some words, is a little over 55% speech. So so the Iliad is 45-55 speech narrative. The Odyssey is the reverse, 55-45. So what I did, I took each of the 24 books, and both epics have 24 books, and made two compartments for each book, one of all speech and the other of all narrative. So it makes a complete data set of 96 samples, 24 times 4. So you have 48 samples in the Iliad, 2 each for each book, one of speech, one of narrative, and ditto with the Odyssey. And when I applied Bird to that, interestingly, all of the Iliad speech samples were very close to each other, and they were also very close to all of the Odyssey speech samples. So so by themselves that would be 48 samples, and they showed a close cohesion in Bird. Similarly, the narrative samples of Odyssey for Iliad, the 24, were very close stylistically to the 24 narrative samples from Odyssey. But all of the speech samples, Iliad and Odyssey together, and all of the narrative samples, Iliad and Odyssey together, were stylistically separate. So it seemed like the big divide in Homeric epic is not between Iliad and Odyssey, it's between speech and narrative in both Iliad and Odyssey. It doesn't matter whether it was from Iliad or Odyssey. If it's speech, it's going to look like speech in the other book, and similar with the narrative. And that was my, I discovered that just experimenting with Bird. So I took the Bird data then, the same data using the 14 most common particles, and I had to standardize it a bit so I could use it with the more commonly used statistical tools of principal components analysis and hierarchical clustering. And lo and behold, the results in those two algorithms, which both can be represented on a chart, a visual chart, so it's very nicely, you can see the whole thing in one picture. All of the speech, looking at the, first of all, in principal components analysis, all of the speech samples are on one side of the chart and mixed up, Iliad and Odyssey together, and all of the narrative samples are on the other side. And there is no mixing. There's no narrative on the speech side and no speech side on the narrative. It's very, very clear and very obvious. And that's using the most standard algorithm of principal components analysis, even with standardizing the variables. And then I used the, like I said, the other one, hierarchical clustering, which usually uses the dendrogram chart, where you have the tree coming down and dividing into branches and sub-branches and so forth. Well, there, the same split is complete and total. All of the narrative samples are on one side of the chart, and mixed up, Iliad, Odyssey, just kind of mixed up randomly. No particular division there. And on the other side, you have all of the branches of the narrative of both epics. So the Bird results, to my mind, were completely justified and confirmed by principal components analysis and hierarchical clustering. And to me, it begs the question, and what's going on? There's something going on between both epics, so that the speech of one epic looks just like the speech of the other epic, at least in terms of the connectors, the particles, and ditto with the narrative. And so that's where I left it.
Yeah. So so if we had to stop, some person on the street, right? Some, non-scholar, and yet, they know about Homer, and that there's a generally prevailing opinion among scholars that, one person, let's say Homer, wrote the Iliad, but someone else wrote the Odyssey, because it's, it's so markedly different in so many different ways, just from a non-computer based, literary analysis and a dialectical analysis as well. But the Bird results, the first impression, one of the first impressions one might form would be what? That there were two people or two groups, we could say, but let's say two people working together. One was writing the narrative, one was writing the speech. Would that be sort of, the first impression that would be created upon seeing these results?
That would be one way to look at it, I guess. I guess you could have one author of the Odyssey and then another person who was totally schooled in that author's style, and in that halo effect, wrote the second book. I don't know, but and maybe there was something in the Bard era before it was committed to writing, or however that happened, that speech and narrative were sung in a different register or used different dialect or something. I don't know. I do not have knowledge to go personally. I don't know where to go on that, so I'll have to leave it with someone else to look at that.
Right. Well, we are doing an article together, and with a third co-author as well, Bernhard Long, at the University of Paderborn and University of Aarhus. Right. And so that's will be still maybe a couple of years away when that's published in an anthology that I'm co-editing together with Aria Rasvar at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And that's on that book is on the origins of language and number, right? And so the study that you and I and Bernhard are doing on these bird results for Homer, right, are sort of tying into the origins and applications, I should have said, the origins and applications of language and numbers. So this is sort of like a applications of number idea here, but application of language is also involved because, right, we have to use the historical and linguistic knowledge to try to make sense of those bird results.
Right.
So it's utterly fascinating. And because of this impulse that you had or idea that you had to do this separation, right, of this speech and narration is utterly fascinating.